Assalamu alaikum. This is Ali Farooq again. I'm speaking from Dallas, Texas, from Ghamidi Center. And as we are going through our last 3 episodes, I have Dr. Shehzad Saleem with me, and we're going to wrap up our conversation for his trip of 2022, hopefully in the next 20-25 minutes. And Shehzad bhai, thank you so much for giving us such a great, deep introduction on Al-Mawrid and the amount of time you spend to learn, as well as you learned, and the 15 years on history of Quran. And the effort was breathtaking from my perspective. It was a controversial topic. Yes, it was only for 3% people, which, as you had said offline, that is about millions of people that get impacted by the topic that you brought forward. And the overall popular perspective prominent in South Asia is probably what you ended up in your book as well, in research is probably the right one.
Right.
But as I said earlier, we need to read that book to understand the amount of research that took place and how different people can perceive Quran and the various the varied reading that's available. Shehzad bhai, this episode I would like to spend on a couple of questions, and some of them might not be similar to the topic, but just want to get your perspective on them. But first of all, can you share with the audience here about your overall contribution? So we would like to know about your books. We would like to know about what you publish, your translations, including the effort to do the translation. How would you make it right, and how would you make it good?
I think that my areas of interest, of course, the primary area of interest being the history of the Quran. So that's perhaps the main contribution. Of course, it might be still plagued with a number of flaws, but that is my main contribution so far. Other than that, I have been able to translate the works of Amin Hassan Islahi and Ghamidi Sahab into the English language. So as far as Islahi Sahab is concerned, I have translated almost 6 volumes from the total of 9. And the works of Ghamidi Sahab have almost been completely translated. Some of them are published, others are being published. And besides this, these two areas, the third area that I'm very interested in is personality development and character building and parenting, teen issues, youth issues. So I've published some material on character building and engaging the youth, especially talking to them and discussing issues with them, and producing written and oral content for them, making them feel comfortable that they can ask any sort of question. So some of my other books that I've written, they relate to this. I would call this as life coaching. That how you navigate in life, how you can connect yourself to God, how you can connect yourself to Quran, and through God and through Quran and through even previous scriptures, how you can build upon the collective heritage to become a better person, a better human being, a better parent, a better part of the family, a member of the family. So that is my third area. And fourth area is that I love writing and reading about poetry, and sports is also something that I do. I play tennis regularly, not here. I mean, I'm not able to play.
I think we met once at your tennis court in Lahore.
Yeah. So it's more of a pastime, but then these are the main areas that I have been able to contribute my little bit.
So that's why it is a very daunting task when you think about translating the work of Amin Hassan Islahi Sahab as well as Javed Ahmed Ghamidi Sahab. When you listen to them, the lectures in Urdu, there's a lot of academic content involved in it. There's a lot of references, a lot of meaning based using proverbs and idioms and many other things that help you explain, right? So can you share with us how would you make your translation successful? What did you do, and what gaps you probably still see and that could be probably still overcome in the future?
So I think translations are much more difficult to render than to maybe write your own work, because you have to be very sincere and honest and very fastidious in trying to understand the intent of the author and try to replicate that in the other language. So before even starting off with my translation work, especially with the Quran, I did read a lot of translations, good English contemporary translations. For example, the best translation that I've found in my life, and I'm still do consult it, is one by N.J. Dawood. It's a single volume translation. Then I also think that Arthur J. Arbery's Quran Translated is also a very good work. a good contribution. From the Muslim side, I can see Abdullah Yusuf Ali making a useful contribution. So besides looking at these original translations by other authors, the other thing is that you have to work hard on the linguist aspect as well, to work hard that you are able to translate the original intent into English, which is fluent, which is understandable, and also as far as possible free from error. So this is something which also relates to how you are maybe well read in language, and not only in language but also in literature, because you see there is a lot of jargon, a lot of parlance which comes into when you translate specific texts. So, and I've been also very fortunate to have colleagues and teachers who have corrected my work. My very able friend Asif Iftikhar, he has been a guide to me in this, and many linguistic aspects I've learned from him and continue to learn from him. Dr. Junaid Hassan, you might have known of him again. He's also been a very kind critic and someone who has guided me in linguistic aspects, and some other people as well. So I do take help, editorial help, I would say. I did take in this regard, and other than that, I've tried my best to go over and over again with the translation. But remember, it started off in 1990. So the translation of the Quran that I just completed of Ghamidi Sahib is published this year. So it's like 25 or 26 years, because what happened was that it was being translated and retranslated and retranslated, because Ghamidi Sahib himself underwent a lot of revisions, his own work. And at times he was paying more attention to his Mizan, which we finished in 2007. Yeah. So it was only after 2007 that Ghamidi Sahib paid more attention to doing Al-Bayan. So I was also able to give more attention after 2007. So before that, it was more fragmentary. And of course, I was also supremely lucky in the fact that I was able to talk to the author himself. You see, it's very difficult when you have a book available and you don't know who the author is. So the author was accessible to me every single day. So wherever I would find difficulty, wherever I would find anything that I needed to discuss with him, he was available always. So I could really go through that, and that was a big plus that I think I have. And in spite of all this, I still think that it would still need a lot of improvement, and it's still it's just like a foundational work. And people coming after me, or even in my own times, they can obviously do much better and improve upon the translation and bring it as close as to the English idiom as is possible, and just take it from there.
It's quite a contribution, because the way I understand, and of course I don't have as deep knowledge, but Tafsir al-Quran, Tadabbur al-Quran, and then there's Al-Bayan, right? So there are three prominent ones we know from a tafsir standpoint, and you had fortunately you were able to translate one of them, especially Al-Bayan in the later stages. So it's quite a daunting task, and I keep hearing from you in the last 3 or 4 episodes when you talk about any work, you talk about 15 years, sometimes you talk about 25 years, sometimes it's like 22 years. You also mentioned Tadabbur Quran itself, but I mean, Al-Sa'i was 1968 to 1980. So we talk about decades of work, And so can you help us and a person like me understand a day in a life of people like yourself? Because I mean, we start some project and we are so restless in few days and few weeks, and we got to get done with it and move on to other things.
Right.
You want to go for, let's say, other aspects of other bucket lists in our lives, including travel, including maybe other objectives we have. So how can people, and were you able to keep yourself so consistent? And all of those 25 years probably overlap, So when you talked about 25 years here, there was another 25 years of work you're doing and overlapping.
So I think that I'm very finicky about one thing, and that is time management and self-discipline. So people who know me, they know that how I try my best to utilize every second of the time that I have. And I plan my day in advance, not only my day, actually next couple of months, I always have in my mind. I keep refreshing them. And I like set my own tasks before me, and I say that this is the thing that I must complete by the end of the day. And unless I end up completing it, I don't go to sleep. So at times the targets are very stiff, at times they are easy. So, but over a period of time, I've realized that this is the type or the extent of work that I can do in a single day. But to be very, very self-disciplined and to be a person who's very prone to time management, it has made me do multitasking. So if you're able to organize your tasks or your life, you can multitask. You can do different things in the same way. So I think I was just stuck to my routine the way I would stick to some other routines, like for example, praying or maybe eating. That's life.
But Shehzad bhai, you're talking about time management, which is great. But what comes to mind as you were saying this is, for example, if I start researching on something, I really go deep, and then I'm really on top of the game, and then I'm able to produce some content on it. Any research. But over time, when I start doing some other work, and that all the research, the linking dots, the connecting dots of that research from this topic to other, because especially research on Islam, especially discussions on Islam, are talking about when someone said this and it is written in Quran like that. So over the course of 22 years, you have to keep all of that fresh. So that's where.
Well, I don't. I think that there is always a period in which you tend to relax. So that is why I lay a lot of emphasis on playing sports. So you see, what happens is that I think this is one of the things that keeps us going on. That when you play sports in the evening, you get recharged. So workouts and playing sports and sweating out, it transforms your life in a very positive way. So every day when I play tennis or play any game, I actually call it sports therapy. So sports therapy is something which over a long day, it relaxes you a lot. And it charges you for the next day. And in those 2 hours of play, you lose the world. I mean, you lose sight of the world. You're like pulling one another. You're playing like a child. You're just shouting and screaming and doing exercise. So I think that one thing that really has helped me is that I am very prone. I mean, very, very regular in trying to not miss any day for sports. Even I have to hear my wife and my children, my child and my relatives saying that you don't have time for us, because I have that fixed time.
It's interesting as a scholar, you're talking about sports, because typically you would not expect, and the frame of mind we have been made about people like yourself who have done work on Deen, and they talk about a lot more focus on meeting people and researching, and there's literally no sports in the life, but being well-rounded is probably the key to probably deliver more productive and more critical work, it looks like. Right. So, and it's very impressive because, and the reason I say impressive is because, so you managed sports as you just talked about, but if I remember it correctly, you talked about that there were all these years you were doing the academic work, and you were in administrative work as well. And I've seen you actually presenting and going to meetings from one to after, talking about human development and human issues and youth issues. And then the other time you talk about, and you sit down and you still have to finish up Al-Bayan translation, and then some other shark topics come up. So you're also working on that. Then you have your own content that you're creating on your own channel. Plus you're working on the education and the education content. So there's so much you're doing. So it looks like the sense of that is being organized and also being a bit more rounded and going back to life and relaxing yourself, playing some sports. Is there also an element of any other thing of retention, of literature, keeping yourself abreast with what's happening?
So yes, my own pastime is, my favorite pastime would be to, keep myself abreast of history, some philosophy still, and poetry as well. So poetry, various histories and biographies also, biographies of famous people. They are also something that I especially try to read upon. And these are the things that relax me. Also at times when I do get the time, like playing board games like chess or Scrabble or even Monopoly with children, they also tend to relax you. So whenever I get that chance, I do that as well. So basically, I think it's like, committing yourself to a certain task and then trying passionately to achieve that goal as much as possible, and at the same time not losing those precious relationships, because at times when you become so dedicated, you tend to lose those relationships. And I think I did earlier on. I was not very available to my mother, maybe to my wife, and to my child, my only child as well, and to my close relatives. And that was the time when I was more imbalanced. I was so much dedicated to work, like a workaholic, that I probably neglected that. But then I learned over time that unless you have that balanced approach in life, you just cannot go on and on. It's like burning yourself too early.
Yeah. Shehzad bhai, before we wrap up, I would like to spend 5-7 minutes maybe on some couple of questions. But I want to wrap up the whole story about yourself you talked about. And the idea was to take it to the world, to explain that what behind Ustad Javed Ahmed Ghamidi, the type of people we have like yourself, and the amount of effort and so much work and was done. And I'm sure there are many other peers that you have who did a similar work, and that's how you come up with a continuity of the fiqh that started from Amin al-Farahi, and and Ghamidi has taken it forward. So when starting talking about that fiqh, there's a lot of criticism in play. And what do you say? What do you say? How should one handle criticism? How did you handle criticism for your content, including history of Islam, for example?
I think the key to knowledge is humility. The fact that you can always admit that you were wrong. The fact that it's not always that the thing about making the right opinion, or maybe ending up on the right opinion. The thing is that the first step to knowledge is that you realize your own limitations, and that you can err, that you can make mistakes, and that there are other people as well who can correct you. So I think the way that we go about is in this academia is that we never think that we have done the final, we are the final word. It's always about learning about more, it's always finding about more, because as human beings, we are liable to falter. We are not, perfect in any way. And research is exactly the same thing. Research is a human endeavor, and being a human endeavor, it can always be plagued with errors. So always keep an eye on this, that no human work can be perfect, and you have to be humble in your presentation. And as I just mentioned earlier on, these words of my teacher, they cling to my mind, that whenever there's some critique on you, always pay attention to that, because as human beings, we need people to criticize us in order to improve ourselves, because unless people criticize us, at times self-criticism does not lead you to that improvement. So I think that handling criticism is not, I would say not difficult at all, if you have the approach that criticism is something which is always welcome, and if it is something which is convincing, then you have to adopt it.
No, and this is what I've seen. So Shehzad, we're taking that topic further. Can you help us understand, because we want to know your perspective, we have heard it from a few others. What is the essence of the religious teaching of Javed Saab? What is the framework behind it? Is there anything you can share about that framework?
Well, as far as his framework is concerned, I think he heavily relies on his two illustrious predecessors, Ustaz Hamiduddin Farahi and Ustaz Amin Hassan Islahi. So I would say that he is a scholar who has laid further emphasis on the fact that the Quran has to be understood in the light of its language, its context, and you must have a flair and appreciation of classical Arabic as far as possible. So I think one of the things that distinguishes him from many scholars of contemporary times is that he is very richly educated in that deep tradition of classical Arabic literature. He has a very profound grasp of classical Arabic literature, and also as a result, a very good grasp of the language of the Quran. And it is like understanding how God is talking to us and speaking to us. And then at the same time, also knowledge of the previous scriptures. So remember, Quran is a book of Islam. It's not the first book of Islam, it's the last book of Islam. So the previous scriptures which preceded the Quran, they also have a lot to offer in order to understand divine revelation and the way God dealt with his people. So the second thing which he is very adept in is knowledge of previous scriptures, and this of course helps him in unfolding many difficult verses of the Quran. And then thirdly, he is also very well grounded in contemporary modern disciplines, as you would be knowing, English literature, philosophy, history, psychology, science, social sciences. They are all, he likes to read a lot, so he's a very voracious reader. He's very widely read, and this also, it's like open up your own mind. And he's also very fond of reading contemporary contemporary criticism, as I said, and contemporary people who think in this way, or maybe someone, as we can classify, who belong to this school of the Shibley school, the Tabistani Shibley. So he typically would encourage us to read all these people, starting from Shibley himself. I'm talking about the modern era. Otherwise, of course, going back, all illustrious scholars of Islam, like, for example, starting off with Abu Hanifa and Shafi'i and Malik and famous scholars, and then Shatibi and the rest who followed. So he has a good knowledge of the Islamic tradition, or Islamic disciplines, I would say, at the same time. But in modern times, what we can say is that they have crystallized in the personalities of this Shibley school, which of course has Shibley as the founder. Then we have Farahi, we have Islahi, we have Maududi Saab, we have Iqbal, we have Sayyid Sulaiman Nadwi, we have Maulana Wahiuddin Khan, we have Ghamidi Saab himself, and Abul Kalam Azad. So these personalities, I can see their pictures right in front of me. So these 9 scholars who have been classified as the Shibley scholars or the Shibley school, the hallmark of the Shibley school is that they have equal access to contemporary disciplines, as is the case with traditional disciplines. So they are people who have religion in their background, who know religious thought very deeply, and at the same time they are very well versed with modern disciplines. So because of the fact that they have this grasp of modernity and contemporary subjects together, coupled with classical knowledge, that has made them very distinguished. So normally we find either people very adept in modern disciplines or adept in disciplines which relate to religion, but seldom do we find a mixture of these two.
So it's a context that's coming out from the people who are well read and well versed on the modern disciplines as well as the traditional or classical disciplines, right? And that's why you called it the School of Shibley.
Shibley, because Shibley was the person who first raised this voice that we must be very well grounded in religion, and we should go far back, as far as the era of the Prophet and the Sahaba, so that we can grasp the knowledge of the Sahaba directly from them, from the Quran and the Sunnah. So our sources should not be any secondary or intermediary sources. We should go right back to the Prophet's personality, the way he presented the Quran and the Sunnah in its pristine form. And as far as our own era is concerned, we should also be extremely well versed with our own disciplines. So Shibley was the person who actually gave this idea, and obviously he himself was also very influenced by that giant Sir Syed Ahmad Khan himself. So Sir Syed, who founded Aligarh, we know that Shibley was a teacher there. He was associate of Sir Syed for 18 years, and he spent a lot of time with him. He had his differences as well with Sir Syed, and we know that Sir Syed had a different line to toe as well. But as far as his sincerity was concerned, and as far as his view was concerned that Muslims should rise and not only embrace new disciplines, they have to be well grounded in their own disciplines as well. If you ask me, I would say that even before Shibley, it was Sir Syed who gave this thought. He might have wandered into some other areas that we might agree with, but then as far as the vision is concerned, I think it was Sir Syed Ahmad Khan.
Yeah, going back to understanding the modern way of looking at things, as well as the classical exam, and how do you create sense, is what these people that you mentioned brought forward. And it's amazing how you talked about some of the very famous people that probably our audience doesn't know have been in context of when they listen to Javed Ahmad Ghamidi Sahab. And you took names such as Allama Iqbal, great poet, and who obviously focused on reconstruction. And then you calling them that they actually all originated from
the Shibley school.
Yeah, it's a great story. Shehzad bhai, this is amazing. Just want to wrap up with a couple of more questions maybe. But main thing, like for an individual, in your perspective, who obviously is listening to a lot of different school of thoughts, for lack of a better word, but other people who are talking about traditional classical Islam, and then listen to Ghamidi Sahab, why should they adopt and come here and listen? And can you help them understand that if there's a person who is trying to understand Islam, what is your take on? What should they do? What are the things they need to keep in mind? Is it about going back to the origin and trying to understand the methodology and trying to differentiate the methodology, and that's to understand maybe this methodology is better than the other?
So I think there are two levels of understanding Islam, and one is the level of the common man, or the people who are conducting themselves as common individuals, and then there's this level who would like to become scholars of religion. So these are two entirely different tracks. But I'd talk more about the first one, which is related more to the vast majority of people, and that is that they must expose themselves to religion as far as possible, and the primary document of religion, of course, is the Quran. So, to understand the Quran, we must appreciate the Quran from its depth. In order to appreciate the Quran from its depth, we must read the Quran through a good translation. Of course, that is a given. But I think one target that every common man can fix himself or before himself or herself is to be able to learn Quranic Arabic, so that the Quran is accessible in its original language. I think this is where we are lacking a lot. And I'm not talking about people learning Arabic, because learning Arabic is a long route. But a shorter one, a shorter access to the Quran is that all of us, we can learn Quranic Arabic in about a year-long study of maybe 1.5 hours per day or something like that. And there are so many good websites, so many good apps available which teach us Quranic Arabic. So I think as far as the common stream or the common man is concerned, besides reading a translation and of course every now and then attending lectures or maybe consulting scholars, one big target that a common person should fix himself or herself is that, I mean, we do so many things for our profession. We have so much time for a lot of things. So learning Quranic Arabic, I can assure you out of personal experience, it's much easier than learning Arabic language itself, because Arabic language is a vast discipline. Quranic Arabic is a subset of that. And as I said, very good websites and good books have been written, like Teach Yourself Quranic Arabic, in which through a little effort you can have access to the Quran. And I think that the biggest exposure that you can have to the Almighty is through the Quran. And there can be nothing better if the Quran is being read and you are able to understand it. So I think this is an area which, right in my youth, I would say in 1981, 82, when I got introduced to Dr. Israr, this was the area that inspired me. That he also laid a tremendous emphasis to the fact that not only translation, I mean good translation, but to read Quranic Arabic, to be able to understand the Quran when it is being read. Because you see, not only does the Quran have this impact that you are able to understand what Almighty is saying, but there is some spiritual force also, because it's like God speaking to you. So when you feel that if the Almighty is speaking to you, the spiritual effect is tremendous, and it really makes you a person who is connected to God. You have that straight God connection. So this is one thing that I would really strongly advise our students, our women, I mean people of any walk of life, because this is what they can do through their phones, through their computers, while sitting at home. And as far as the other question is concerned regarding maybe people who would like to become scholars of Islam, so that is still another, that's a higher strand, and that is that if people would like to specialize, like, I mean, if a person wants to become a doctor or an engineer or a scholar of his own discipline, then we are trying to also, inshallah, trying to arrange for this, that in the next few years we would offer them education in which people who would like to become scholars of religion who are able to be grounded in the same way as the Shibley School, in which they are educated not only in contemporary disciplines, but also have a very, very strong grounding in the classical disciplines.
So that's why this was such a great answer. I would want to wrap up to that, because you talked about the understanding Quran, using the Quranic Arabic, and this is one of the things which you really hear. And the fact that you said that you would feel the direct discussion and impact and talking to God, and that's probably the best way for a common man to get close and get a better understanding of the religion. There are many other topics left, but inshallah in your next visit we'll make sure that we bring them forward. We appreciate that you coming to Dallas and spending time with us, and also going to other cities, and appreciate you giving time over here for understanding and helping us understand the background and history of Al-Mawrid, as well as your own journey. Thank you, Shehzad bhai.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being with you.
Thank you, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.